1. I need to set this scene a little. First things first. I'm not sure if I really believe in ghosts and the paranormal in general, but I'm certainly fascinated by it, and always have been. That being said, I only ever had this one experience, knock on wood. In 2014, I traveled abroad alone for the first time in my life. I was 20 then, and was going to spend a week on a Scottish island. Those were also the very first flights I ever took. Now, my grandma was an extremely anxious woman, and a religious woman. So the day before I was to leave for my holiday, she hugged me, and gave me a little gold chain with a cross on it. It was to keep me safe, a talisman of sorts. It's perhaps worth noting that I'm not religious myself, but you best believe I carry that little chain in my wallet all the time. The following year, 2015, my grandma passed in June. While it was obviously very sad, it was not unexpected, as she was 86 years old and had been badly cancer sick for years. To be honest, I was mostly just relieved that she was finally no longer in pain when she passed away. I do still miss her terribly, though. Now we finally get to the good part. In August 2015, so 2 months after my grandma died, I traveled to Scotland again, this time with my best friend. Now, my grandma had lived with my aunt in the coziest little house for around 35 years. I love that place, and I feel completely at home and at peace when I'm there. It's an old and kind of dark house, but not creepy at all. When I was 8 or so, my parents built a house right next to it, so my aunt and grandma and us in the other house became neighbors. The day before I would leave for my 2015 holiday, I went over to my aunt to say bye to her. The layout of her house is like this. You walk through the entrance door, and you're in the living room. To the right side is what used to be my grandma's room, or you can walk straight ahead through a narrow short corridor, which has doors on the left side to the bathroom and to a little pantry. When you walk through the corridor, you reach a sort of dining room. Between the corridor and the dining room, there's an old wooden door. It's painted white, and it has a thick panel of opaque glass in it. Am I making sense? English is my second language. On that evening, the moment I set foot in the dining room, I heard 3 knocks on that glass panel in rapid succession. It sounded exactly like someone tapping the glass with their fingernail. Now, I'm aware that there's probably a rational explanation for this. It's an old wooden door, it creaks and such. Or maybe me planting my foot in the dining room sent vibrations through the floor, which caused the old door to make that sound, but please, bear in mind that over the course of 20 years I walked through that door almost every single day, thousands of times, and it never once made a sound anything close to this, and it hasn't since. Nor did I ever hear it make that sound when someone else walked through, which again I witnessed thousands of times. So the door made a sound that somehow sounded exactly like a fingernail, tapping the glass rapidly 3 times. Which had never happened before and has never happened since, on the eve of my departing for a holiday abroad. You be the judge of how likely that sounds. But those are some coincidences. After the incident, I was a little spooked, but not scared. It was immediately evident to me that it was just my grandma wishing me a good journey, and asking me to be careful. Note that I am usually a skeptic, albeit interested in the paranormal, and I do not believe in life after death. Unfortunately, that's the only experience I ever had. However, my aunt has more stories. Now, my aunt is not one to make up stories, she's not the creative type, but she's a very direct, no-bullshit kind of person, very independent and tough as nails. I have never ever seen her shed a tear, not even when Grandma died. She's just not a very outwardly emotional person. I love her very much, and I have no reason to disbelieve her. She told me that she would often catch a whiff of my grandma's perfume coming from what used to be her bedroom. She said the scent was particularly strong in the evening, when Grandma used to sit in the living room and watch TV. One night, my aunt was in her bedroom when she heard knocking on the wall from my grandma's room. Their rooms are adjacent to one another, just like Grandma used to do towards the end when she had already become bedridden and needed something from my aunt. The most incredible experience, told to me by my aunt completely casually, as if it isn't the coolest and creepiest thing ever, was one night when my aunt was again sitting in her room when she started hearing knocking sounds coming from the direction of the bathroom. The sound moved from the bathroom to the pantry, then to the dining room, and finally to the kitchen, which is right next to my aunt's room. So there's this knocking sound, like it's coming from inside the cupboards. Some banging from the pans in there or whatever, and it's moving ever closer to her. So what does my aunt do? She yells, "God damn it, Mom, I know you're here, stop being creepy." Silence. The sound is gone and does not start up again. This part always makes me laugh, because who yells at their dead mom's ghost? My aunt, that's who. Over the years, my aunt has had a few more minor experiences, mostly the scent of perfume. It stopped when she got rid of the TV in the living room. Then, in December of 2018, an aneurysm burst in my aunt's head. She came very, very close to dying. If my dad had not miraculously found her just after a few minutes, she would have died on the spot. She was in a coma for weeks, developed pneumonia, the works. She's also in her 50s, a heavy smoker, and just not in great shape. So basically the doctors told us it's not looking very good. But my aunt pulled through and gradually got better and better. Today she's completely recovered and 100% back to her own self. A few weeks after she woke up from her coma, she told us that when she was still in the coma, she had talked to my grandma, who had told her it's not her time to go yet. My aunt now is completely, steadfastly convinced that my grandma is her guardian angel. May my dad find my aunt on the floor and administer first aid and save her life. So that's it. Make of that what you will. I know I don't understand it. It's difficult to reconcile when your own personal experience and that of a loved one's you have no reason not to believe clashes with what you perceive as reality. For me, that means that while I do not believe in any kind of God nor in the afterlife, and I'm unconvinced about ghosts and paranormal stuff like that, I myself have experienced something I cannot easily explain, as had my aunt, who I believe fully and would trust with my life. And the funny thing is, most people you talk to have some kind of ghost story, don't they? Each of my parents does, my buddy in the office does, and I know of so many others. Let's not even go into the stories my in-laws from Vietnam have. Ghosts and such are a completely normal part of life there, especially for the older generation. Talk to any older Vietnamese person, and guarantee they have at least one incredible story. So where does that leave us? I don't know. I don't understand. 2. Crucial backstory info. My friend bought a portrait of Basquiat in a town nearby that's known for its heightened spiritual energy. There are a lot of hauntings and a lot of eccentrics that live there, psychics, Wiccans, etc. He saw this portrait at one of the local art shops while perusing with his mom. It immediately caught their attention because it felt noticeably different than the other pieces. When his mom got closer to the portrait, she started to cry, because she could feel the subject's pain emanating from the picture. My friend bought it, thinking it was a good sign, I don't know, and showed it to me the next time I came over. When I saw it, I immediately felt uncomfortable. It almost felt alive, and that scared me. If I look at a portrait of Basquiat's eyes long enough, I get anxiety. I asked him to flip the portrait over, and it's been turned against the wall on his bedroom floor ever since. Fast forward to today's incident. I was super tired after work and took a nap in my friend's room alone. First time sleeping in there alone, despite me spending the night all the time. I had one of those super vivid inception dreams where I would wake up, think I was actually awake, and then wake up over and over again. I've had these dreams before, but this one felt especially real, because I could feel such sensations to the same degree that I feel when I'm awake. Usually I'm not tripped up by these dreams, but I was genuinely confused on what reality was and wasn't. After waking up multiple times and realizing that everything felt physically real in the dream world, the room's energy felt the same in my dream as it did in real life too, I became aware that I was laying on my side, still dreaming but also being present in the room. I saw and felt a disembodied hand put their knuckles in my mouth. I bit down on them playfully and looked up to see who it was. It was a young man who, to my knowledge, I've never seen before. He smiled at me and laughed. It almost felt like clowning around with a close friend. I grabbed his fingers and squeezed them. They felt real. Then he was gone. My friend woke me up, for real this time, shortly after that. I told him about the dream, and we both thought it was weird. Somehow the topic of Basquiat came up, and I remembered that weird portrait my friend had. Now to note, the portrait isn't an exact resemblance. I've never seen Basquiat's face before. When I got home, I looked up Basquiat, and lo and behold, he looks just like the guy I saw in my dream. There is a picture of him smiling, and it is a spitting image of the face I saw. So, I don't know what to make of this, really. I just thought it was interesting. Not sure if it means anything. My friend doesn't know what to do with the portrait now, and we wanted to get some input. Another thing I should mention, I'm not a first-timer when it comes to weird reality and paranormal experiences. I used to repeatedly see a shadow person as a kid. This went on for about 6 months after my dog died, and prayed with a rosary that my grandma gave me that I would stop seeing those types of things. I didn't, and haven't seen anything with my physical eyes since then, but I can still see entities and read the energy of places with my eyes closed. For example, I closed my eyes and tried to fall asleep at another friend's crib a few years back. But all I could see in my mind's eye was the room I was in and a little girl looking at me from the corner. I asked my friend about it a couple weeks later, and his sister overheard and freaked out. She said that she used to see a girl at night when she was a kid in that room. I consequently shit my pants and stopped going over to their house. Because of my past experiences with this type of stuff, I'm wondering if I was visited by a projection of Basquiat. I could be tripping, but I would still like to hear your guys' opinions. 3. Hello everyone. I was curious about what my experience could be, and what I encountered would be known as. It is indeed a shadow figure, but not a hat man, or some other figures that have clothes on. This story, with some extensive details. I was in 1st grade or something, I can't remember when, but I was definitely a super young kid. And I was with a bunch of other kids in this lock-in at a church I remembered to be called Trinity Valley Church or something. But looking it up now, it's the Great Tree Korean Church behind Frankfurt Donuts. Maybe it was renovated, but it was definitely a church behind Frankfurt Donuts. During this lock-in, hide-and-seek was played, sermons preached, and so on. So after a while, we were beat, ready for sleep. There were 2 rooms used for everyone to sleep in their sleeping bags, but these rooms were on a hallway with other rooms with their doors open and lights off, just like the designated rooms. This is important later. The hallway has a little branch midway to the kids' sermon area, connected with a small kitchen setup, with one of the hallway becoming a T intersection, one end heading to the main door, another entrance to the kids' room, and the adults' sermon room. The other direction is a short path to a custodian's closet with an emergency exit. It's around a 7-foot hallway. So we were all winding down, and some of the kids were going to go to the water fountain for some water. I decided to tag along. I was a super weird kid and no one really liked me, let alone have me in their cliques. So I was just following this group of 3, trying to fit into the conversation of the group. I was last to the fountain, and I was pretty thirsty, so I was there for a minute, slurping away. By the time I was done and looked up, the group I was following already headed back. The problem was that I didn't know which room I was in, and with a handful of other rooms opened up and looking the same, I got lost. I finally found the 2 designated rooms by barely making out sleeping bags in the dark, a small amount of light from the hallway giving me just enough to get to where I needed to be. But I couldn't find my sleeping bag. I went back and forth in the rooms trying desperately to find my bag, but to no avail with the lack of light. Giving up, I decided to sit in the hallway and simply wait out the night. Even the adults were knocked out and everyone was asleep, and it was quiet by this time. I remember sitting for a while daydreaming and looking around, and just trying to keep the boredom at bay. That's when I looked down the hallway to the T intersection when I see that shadow figure. It was walking from the main entrance area to the emergency exit with the custodian's closet. It was really tall, its head reaching the ceiling. It didn't have hands, feet, or any features for that matter. Imagine a shadow independent from the original object walking on its own. Even the edges of it were fuzzy, like an actual shadow cast by a person. I tensed up immediately and kept my eyes on it as it walks across. At some point, I feel it stare back, and I get cold and anxious, with a ton of bad feelings, mainly depression and suicide, coming to mind as it stared at me. The thing is that I didn't see it turn its head or anything, I just felt it stare back. As soon as it reached the other end of the hallway where the custodian's closet was, and I lost sight of it, I broke out in tears and started sobbing. My eyes glued to that end of the hallway. At some point, the adults stirred too and came out to see who was crying so hard just to find me. They tried to calm me down, asking me the typical questions like, "Why are you sitting out here, and what's wrong, why are you crying?" I explained the situation and told them I saw someone walk that way, pointing to the T intersection. I don't remember how they reacted, but I believe they were uneasy, but also in disbelief. As I was just a kid, I guess. One of the adults was a custodian, and he was an old man, and the other adults pastors or something. One of the pastors grabbed my hand, and we walked down the hall to that T intersection. "Which way did they go?" they asked me. I pointed to the direction of the emergency exit and told them that's where I saw it go. Clearly confused, I hear the adults talking amongst themselves, unsure of my claims. I specifically remember them saying the emergency exit would ring an alarm if opened. The custodian opens up the closet, and it was devoid of life as well. Seeing that no one was there and that I was confident that the shadow figure went that way, they decided to head back, sure that I had imagined things and no one was at the church but us. They led me to my sleeping bag, and I hid deep into it, scared to leave any part of me exposed. Luckily, my sleeping bag had these zipper vents to get the heat out, and I had those completely open to help keep me cool. Being a kid, I assumed the mesh that separated the outside to the inside of the sleeping bag from the vents were enough of a barrier to protect me from anything trying to get to me. I ended up sleeping at some point, and waking up with everyone else, and we all went home. A lot of things are super fuzzy, like how many rooms were actually there in the hallway, or the other direction of the hallway going from the T intersection. However, I definitely remember that T intersection at one end of the hallway, and that the emergency exit would cause the alarm to go off, as well as that shadowy figure. So the question I've had all my life, I'm 20 now, is, what did I see? What is it? 4. I was 19 when this happened. I lived in Chicago, Illinois. My family and I used to rent an apartment in the McKinley Park neighborhood. Our tenants were, at the time, family members. My then aunt was 9 months into her pregnancy, and that day her water broke. There was limited space in the 2 family cars, and the rest of my family went with her to the hospital, which was only a 15-minute drive from their current location. I volunteered to stay back, and I had the house all to myself. It was a 2-story house, 2 separate apartments, and the basement, which was fully furnished. The layout is complex to describe, because the winding staircase that leads from the first floor to the basement is located in the first floor's kitchen. At the bottom landing to the right immediately following the landing is a laundry room, and an adjacent half-bedroom. If you follow the corridor heading straight to the front of the staircase, there's another room to the right, a bedroom belonging to my, at the time, uncle. Past that, there is a large room, a recreation room with space for a minibar, a pool table, a set of weights, and a small cot or bed. This is relevant because as soon as my family left for the hospital, I headed downstairs to do some exercise. I went downstairs and I sat by the set of weights, loaded the weight, and got in position to start bench pressing. I did sets of 10 repetitions, and I did about 3 sets before the stuff hit the fan. It started off very subtly. I was ripping out a set of bench presses when I heard the unmistakable creak of someone walking down those old winding steps from the staircase that leads from the kitchen on the first floor to the basement. I instinctively called out my sister's name, thinking she'd come back. Nothing. After a few seconds, I convinced myself that it was the house settling, and I went back to exercising. I got halfway through a set when I heard it again. This time I was sure I wasn't hearing things. I got up, and I cautiously walked to the landing of the winding staircase, and I made my way up slowly. It creaked beneath my feet. I'm not a big guy. I was 5'7" tall at the time. I weighed an underwhelming 150 pounds. I was, and continued to be very strong and agile, but I was unnerved a bit. I walked around the entire first floor to make sure I was alone and no one had returned, or worse, broke in, because I made my way upstairs to check the first floor. I checked all of the rooms in the basement except for the bedroom. It was always locked, and this time was no exception. As I headed back down from checking the first floor, however, the door was wide open. Typically, this bedroom had a bed, 2 nightstands, a TV, and a walk-in closet. None of these were there. The room was completely empty, and I felt like I was in a trance. In the middle of the room was a familiar little girl. It was my sister. Except this couldn't be my sister. This girl looked like my sister when she was 11, with long bangs. My sister is older than me by 2 years. She's 21, but there she is in front of me looking 11. But her eyes have no whites, they're all black. It looked like she was looking right into me, and I got chills all over my body. She smiled creepily at me. Not menacing, just creepily. I ran out of that room and slammed the door shut behind me. I turned off all the lights, ran to the 2nd floor, and waited for my family to return from the hospital. When they did, I didn't mention anything to them. My step-grandmother is a witch. No, not a horrible person. A literal witch. I know she was into the occult, and I never liked being at their house. But that's where I had my weight set. After that, I decided to not go downstairs again. I don't believe in ghosts or ghouls or phantasms or apparitions in the traditional sense. I know what these beings are. They're demons who take on many forms, and I want no part of them. Thankfully, we were later able to move into our own house. Since then, we've been just fine. 5. Hi there. We moved to this apartment about 6 months ago while I was about 5 months pregnant with our son. I always got a really good feeling here, though the previous tenant's granddaughter died while living here. Her room was the 2nd bedroom, a cute little spacious room that we would use for the nursery. I stayed here alone almost every night during my pregnancy, as my boyfriend worked overnight, but I never felt strange until something happened. We left that spare bedroom mostly untouched until about September when I had my baby shower. I started filling the room with different gifts that mainly stayed in boxes. Around this time, my boyfriend, who was alone there during the day while I was at work, started complaining of strange dreams like someone was waiting outside the bedroom door but couldn't get in. He went through a couple months of sleep paralysis type dreams that could have been induced by extreme tiredness or his sleep medication, but they eventually faded away. I went on maternity leave in October, and in that month before the baby came, I really started putting everything together in the baby's room. I even got these cute little star decals that I hung up on the walls, but I remember the eerie feeling of someone watching me decorate lingering in the doorway. About 2 weeks before I had my son, I woke in the middle of the night while my boyfriend was at work, and started a show on the TV to fall asleep to, when I heard something push on the bedroom door. It sounded like someone was pressing their body against the door. I went out to investigate. I checked the whole apartment, and there was nothing there. I settled back into bed and waited. It happened again, but this time harder, like a loud knock. Needless to say, I got the hell out of there and stayed elsewhere for the night. Fast forward to last week. We've been very busy with the new baby, so it's been hard to notice paranormal activity over all the crying, feeding, and diaper changes. We still got a feeling of being watched from the spare bedroom, and I started shutting the door at night because it always feels like someone is standing in the dark, waiting to jump out at you. At this point, I need to note that the baby is still sleeping with us and is not in this bedroom as of yet, and will not be until he's 6 months old. So anyway, last week, I wake with the baby around 3 a.m. for his normal feed, and I begin to hear tapping from the spare bedroom. I ignore it, as I do with most sounds I hear at night, or I try to. My boyfriend wakes up to help with the baby at this point, and as he quiets down, we hear the tapping get louder. Then there's a loud bang like something falling off a shelf, and the light in the bedroom switches on, and we can see the light illuminating through the crack in the door. My stomach dropped. I've never been so scared in my life. I didn't go investigate until the morning, but when I did, I saw that the light switch was flipped up. No strange electrical occurrence, but something physically turned that switch up. I'm very concerned about putting our son in this room in a few months, and I'm not sure what to do. I don't want him to be afraid, but the little guy is already getting so big, and will eventually need his own crib. I also want to make it clear to this presence that this is our house, and we will use whatever room we like. It should be noted that I do not do Ouija boards or seances. I think opening a portal of communication can bring in something far worse than a teenage ghost who doesn't want us in her room. Thoughts? Advice? Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 5 True Paranormal Stories, episode 176. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Now, I know you guys can't really hear it because I generally cut them out, but the neighborhood dogs are not barking, but there is a dog howling. And that certainly puts you at ease when you're recording spooky stories. Okay, I think we'll wrap up there. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.